Ladies and gentlemen, here is another installment from Lockdown Movies. Fortunately, I was like, well, it's the start of the third year. Most people are, the isolated professionals will come down with it in the third year, like my grandmother said. I guess I must feel that I'm the lowest bit of the isolated professionals. Anyway, here from COVID lockdown and everything else, um, I found Netflix that my brother left on the thing, and they vacated a house and left me in the good place. I could be like I have the whatever it is to myself, a rolling 4 level vitamin pill get well vitamin C supplement thing that probably would make The Rock jealous or something else, which I hope to do one of his movies here, even if it's an old one. And just to let you know, everything's going good. But I'm going to start out with the Hateful Eight. And the Hateful Eight, I have to tell you, I have been looking forward to seeing it so long because I missed it when it was in movie theaters. And then I just kept missing it and missing it and missing it. And this movie, I had known some of the kind of like mythological past to it, everything else, and all of that. And there's this whole thing where um, that's not really in the movie. It's one of those things where like you got to read the book over it. I'm sure that there's something to it, but it was very much with all the same characters that I'd heard of in it from the stories, since my grandfather is all in the Old West. I think the actors portrayed everything very well. I will say it was a little bit um, it's very different because I remember a couple of people, let's call them immigrants to the USA from the 80s. They saw some westerns to try and figure out how to do English. There's no cussing or spitting or whatever you want to say it in front of the women and everything. So let's put it this way. This was not your grandpa's western by any stretch of the imagination. This was a very in your face, rough, killing takeover in every way, conning, depth into the moments of what is the evilest, hardest parts of when it takes those needs to make a kill. To take over a rest post. The instant things on a spur to say people aren't going to be here, people aren't allowed, people will lie, whatever it is. The hardest parts you can think of. Befriending people, turning on them, using the smallest amount of charm, setting up fake IDs, killing people for their IDs, everything. All condensed into one or two little sections off of it. And I'm sure that there was, over the time there would have been times that you could have just taken everything and made it almost into a sitcom movie. The parts in between. But they cut it out to where you would see only the parts. There would be how you'd have to hold a female prisoner using actual brutality and violence against a person who was most decidedly to be in death row, whose gang would go out there and burn whole cities to the ground that we know of today, to saying why people couldn't be in a stage wagon and why people wouldn't trust him. They used a lot of racial profanity, a lot. And that wasn't really so much up there. I could say maybe once or twice you could have said that it was there for the story. Maybe it was a little bit over the top. In a way, there was some very grotesque shooting, stabbing up close. It was a very violent, blood-filled movie. Now, while I personally don't find that much of a problem with that, the setting up, the line of it, the innuendos, the poisoning of different people, to where there's basically only going to be one sole survivor that holds out to the very end. And you can say however it was that happened, however it is, if you ever look up the story out there for what happens after at the rest over. The intricacies of everything are absolutely beautiful as far as a detective movie. As far as the ones feeling themselves out, the complexities of the characters are very well set up and very well made in conflict of each other and in going with each other. The little tales that they do, the things that they say they do, and almost nobody in there is ever looked at as a nice person. From the brother wanting to save his sister from death row with their outlaw gang, to the lawmen, to everything. You can see why it's called the Hateful Eight. Every one of them has a trait of them that would leave them all incredibly hate-riddled and hate-filled. And each one would be hated by anyone else out there. And you can say that it's the nature of their job, the business that has happened. Each one of them has an explanation like that off of it. And it is a deep inner working into the different fragments of what would be souls of people in this world. That and saying, with the shooting and the killing and everything else, which was with there in some of the language, which, would have been probably proper for the time. Could you really sit through all of that? It takes a very special person to be able to look through, and I can see why it was an Academy Award winner, with the extremities of everything in the portrayal of the different sections, the different shards of humanity. And at the same time, them being connected on basically the hate situation. And in another world, if they had all worked together, you could have probably said all those characters would have ran the entire world or USA if they had all been able to come together with the manpower that was underneath them. The abilities that they had. This is Colin Dawson with Lockdown Movies. Like and subscribe.